Ma'am, this lounge is for executives only. Guests and spouses need to wait in the public concourse. That's what the attendant said, loud enough for the other travelers to hear but just quiet enough to seem professional. She didn't smile. She didn't make eye contact. Just waved a manicured hand toward the glass doors behind her like she was swatting away a fly. Jade Coleman stood there, calm, composed, and deeply used to this routine. She wore a black power suit with minimalist gold earrings and a carry-on bag slung over her shoulder. Her boarding pass peeked out from her leather folio. Coleman, J/flight number 94/Skyward Air, executive tier. Still, the attendant didn't budge. You can wait out there, ma'am. We'll call your associate when he's cleared. Jade blinked. I'm the executive, she said. The woman tilted her head like she'd heard a bad joke. No, I meant the executive. The passenger listed under the private suite. Jade held up her badge. Skyward Gold, Elite Owner Tier. Still, the woman just smiled, that brittle, corporate smile that hides cruelty behind customer service. I understand. But we do have standards for who enters this lounge. Before we go deeper, let me ask you something. Have you ever walked into a place you paid for, a place you earned your way into, and been asked to step aside like you wandered in by mistake? Have you ever felt someone's eyes look at your face, then through you, then past you, like the clothes you wore, or the tone of your voice, somehow disqualified you from the air they were breathing? Then this story isn't just for you. It is you. And what happened next? Changed everything. Jade didn't raise her voice. Didn't threaten. She simply opened her phone, scrolled to a photo, and held it out. It was a picture of her standing next to a Skyward Air executive jet, arm around the CFO, smiling beside a banner that read, "Welcome, Jade Coleman, our newest board member." The attendant's smile slipped for the first time. But before she could respond, a voice echoed from behind. "Excuse me, is there a problem here?" It was a tall white man in a navy sport coat and tan loafers, a Skyward loyalty flyer named Patrick. He glanced at Jade, then turned back to the attendant and said loud enough for others to hear, "She bothering you?" And that's when Jade finally snapped. "No," she said sharply. "But you are." Patrick blinked. "You think I'm being difficult because I asked to use a service I'm paying for?" He laughed. "I think you're playing a card that doesn't apply here." She stepped closer. "The only card I'm playing is my shareholder ID. And if you interrupt me one more time, I'll play my next move, grounding this terminal's flagship flight until everyone in here learns the difference between assumption and policy." Patrick scoffed. "You're bluffing." Jade looked at the attendant, dead in the eye. "Page Flight 94's crew. Tell them Jade Coleman needs to confirm passenger protocol." The attendant hesitated. Then picked up the phone. 3 minutes later, a Skyward director, a short man in a charcoal suit and visible panic, rushed through the glass doors, sweating. "Ms. Coleman," he said, breathless. "We didn't know you'd arrived already." Jade turned, slowly. "Your staff did." Patrick stepped back. The room went silent. Even the bartender stopped polishing glasses. The Skyward director looked at the attendant. "This is Jade Coleman. She's not just a passenger. She's a senior board stakeholder." The attendant's mouth opened. Closed. "No apology necessary," Jade said flatly. "Just take notes. I won't be the last face you misjudge in this room." That afternoon, in a meeting 35,000 feet above the Atlantic, Jade filed a formal equity complaint with Skyward's Operations Committee. Not for herself. For the next woman. The one who wouldn't have had a badge. Or a title. Or a jet to ground. But the story didn't end there. Because the incident went viral. Not because Jade posted it, but because someone else had filmed it. A 17-second clip of her standing firm, staring down the man who tried to label her difficult, was uploaded anonymously with the caption, "She didn't threaten. She corrected." And the room changed. And in the next 48 hours, Skyward's leadership was forced to issue the most public apology in its history. But that wasn't enough for Jade. Because next, she was going to change how lounges were built altogether. By Monday morning, the clip had crossed 1 million views. Not because it was sensational. Because it was familiar. Women in the comments shared eerily similar stories, different airports, same smirks. Men chimed in too, admitting they'd seen it happen and said nothing. But the most unexpected flood? Retirees. Black veterans. Former teachers. Civil rights workers. Nurses. Women with silver hair and decades of quiet swallowed pain. One woman, age 71, commented, "This happened to me at JFK in 1986. I said nothing. I still think about it." But Jade wasn't thinking about likes. She was already in Skyward Air's corporate office, a sleek glass tower that looked down on a city that didn't know how to look up unless the name was white, male, or inherited. She stood in the boardroom with her back to the windows, staring at the company's leadership team, 12 men, 10 of them white, all of them suddenly very interested in addressing culture. The head of HR began to speak. "Ms. Coleman, we understand this has been challenging, and the video clearly sparked." "I don't want a reaction," Jade interrupted. "I want a correction. Starting with this." She pulled out a file. Thin. Neat. Explosive. Inside were 15 discrimination complaints filed by Skyward employees and passengers over the last 18 months, quietly resolved, buried in legal settlement folders, most of them involving women of color. Jade didn't find them by accident. She found them because someone sent them to her. Anonymously. The sender? An internal whistleblower. But what chilled Jade to her core wasn't the number of complaints. It was the signature at the bottom of each resolution. Gregory L. Stanhope, VP of Passenger Experience. The same man who had recommended her for the board 6 months ago. She stared at his name. A man who shook her hand. Told her she'd be good optics. Then silenced the very voices he claimed to uplift. She looked at the CEO. "How many more files haven't reached me yet?" He didn't answer. Which said everything. That night, Jade walked into her brownstone in Harlem, took off her heels, and sank into the armchair she'd bought with her first bonus check 18 years ago. She opened her laptop and began writing. Not a resignation. A speech. By Thursday, the company scheduled a live shareholder meeting, crisis PR in full swing. Executives sweating. Lawyers circling. And Jade? She showed up with a folder. But not to hide behind it. To open it on stage. She took the mic and said, "I was recruited here because I looked good in a press release. But here's what wasn't in the brochure, the culture beneath the carpets." She held up one of the buried complaints. "This is Nadine. A former flight attendant pushed out after reporting harassment." Another. "This is Shauna. She was told she was too urban to greet first-class guests." And finally, "This one's mine." A beat. Gasps. Because when you let someone humiliate a black woman in your lounge, not once, not twice, but systematically, you're not protecting a brand. You're protecting a pattern. The room fell silent. Until someone began clapping. An older man in the third row. Then another. Then half the room. But the twist was still coming. Because after the meeting, Jade's assistant rushed over with a shaking phone. "Ma'am," she said. "You need to see this." A leaked email thread had just surfaced, posted by a former Skyward intern. Internal comms from Gregory Stanhope and 2 board members, about Jade. Timestamped 3 days before the lounge incident. She's making noise. Too much visibility. let's limit her access to passenger-facing authority. Another line. Find a reason to revoke her elite privileges. Gently. And the last one? She's an asset until she becomes a liability. Now it was sabotage. Intentional. Coordinated. And illegal. Jade stood frozen. Not with fear, but with something else. Certainty. Because now she didn't just have the moral high ground. She had legal grounds too. Later that night, in a video filmed from her living room, Jade spoke directly to the camera. This isn't about an airline. It's about the quiet ways powerful systems shut down the people they claim to elevate. She leaned forward. And I'm not flying above that. I'm flying through it and bringing everyone with me. It started with a broadcast. CBS ran the headline first. Skyward Air executive attempted to strip black board members' authority, emails reveal. Then NPR. Then the Wall Street Journal. Then it was everywhere. Cable news ran the story on repeat, with split screens showing the now viral clip of Jade being denied access to the Skyward Lounge beside the leaked email that read, "Find a reason to revoke her elite privileges." Commentators debated it like it was new. But for millions of people watching, especially black elders, there was nothing new about it. They'd lived it. "I haven't flown in years," one 78-year-old black woman said in a TikTok video, her voice shaking. "Because I remember what they did to us in the 60s when we tried to use the same terminal doors." Another, a retired Tuskegee airman, stitched together footage from his personal archive and added, "She didn't just stand up for herself. She carried every one of us who ever sat in silence while they closed the gate." Jade's story had crossed generations. It wasn't just a trending moment. It was a reckoning. But inside Skyward HQ, it was chaos. 3 board members issued statements distancing themselves from Gregory Stanhope, the man who'd once called Jade diversity gold. Their HR chief resigned. And Gregory disappeared. No apology. No press conference. Just a vanished LinkedIn page and a no comment from his lawyer. Which only made it worse. Because now it was clear. He never respected Jade. He feared her. And when fear couldn't control her, he tried to erase her. Jade, meanwhile, didn't hide. She appeared on every major platform. ABC. CNBC. Oprah's podcast. Not to complain, but to build. This isn't about revenge. It's about redesign. They spent decades building systems that excluded us with a smile. Now we're designing spaces where dignity is the dress code. Then came the twist. Not from Skyward. From Washington. A senator from Georgia reached out directly. "Your speech changed everything," he said. "We want to draft legislation mandating anti-bias transparency in elite travel services. Would you testify?" Jade paused. Then smiled. "I'll do one better. I'll write it." That same week, Skyward's CEO called an emergency meeting with Jade. He came prepared with a contract extension, a multi-million-dollar retention bonus, and a carefully scripted apology. Jade let him finish. Then said, "You think this is about keeping me? It's about keeping people like me from being erased." She slid a folder across the table. "Here's my counteroffer. Disband the current board. Replace half with women of color. Restructure your complaint process. Build new lounges that don't look like banks. And name the first one after Nadine, the flight attendant you paid to be quiet." The CEO stared at her. "This is radical." Jade leaned in. "No. This is repair." By Sunday, she was on the cover of Time magazine. The title? Jade Coleman, the woman who grounded the sky. But that wasn't the legacy she cared about. It was the inbox full of notes from retired teachers, grandmothers, bus drivers, and veterans, people who'd been told their whole lives, "You don't belong here." And now, They didn't need an invitation. They had Jade's blueprint. That night, she read one message again and again. It was from a woman in her late 60s. It said, "You walked through that door like we were standing right behind you. And I think maybe we were." And now, Jade had something bigger in mind. Not just a new airline standard. Not just policy. She was about to change the very air elite spaces were built in. The fallout had settled into momentum. Skyward was no longer the only company in the spotlight. Other luxury travel brands, private jet networks, elite hotel chains, airport concierges, were now facing audits of their own. Customers were asking harder questions. Staff were coming forward. But Jade? She didn't slow down. She was already planning something bigger. Project Open Air. A new alliance. Not just for better airport lounges, but for new, inclusive executive travel spaces designed by the people who were once denied entry. Spaces with transparency. Spaces with oversight. Spaces that felt like welcome, not warning. The idea was met with praise. Then doubt. Then fear. Because powerful people started realizing something. If she succeeds, we lose control. And just like that, the knives came out. It started with a board memo. Confidential. Leaked. An internal Skyward document that referred to Jade's initiatives as emotionally compelling, but disruptive to the integrity of executive branding. One bullet point stood out. We cannot let one woman rewrite how power looks in travel. Jade laughed when she saw it. Too late, she whispered. But what cut deeper than any memo was the betrayal that followed. Her own mentor, Elias Denton, the man who vouched for her appointment to the Skyward board, the man who once said Jade will change the way corporate America breathes, had just signed a joint statement with 4 other senior advisors. A letter calling her reforms rushed and reckless. Jade read it once. Then again. Each sentence carefully written to sound polite, but designed to isolate her. She didn't cry. Didn't yell. She walked to her bookshelf, pulled down a file, and opened the original emails from Elias, the ones where he admitted Skyward's internal culture needed a fire starter. Be the match, he once wrote. Now, he wanted to smother the flame. Jade didn't write a response. She scheduled a press conference. But not at a podium. She held it in one of the very lounges she'd been denied from just weeks earlier, after gaining voting power on the venue lease through her new alliance with 2 real estate holding firms. She stood beneath gold lighting, next to a champagne bar built for the elite, and said, "They called me reckless. Because I made justice move faster than their comfort. They called me rushed. Because I didn't wait for another generation to be disrespected quietly." She gestured around the room. This lounge? These walls? They were built to keep people like me out. Now they echo with our footsteps. You want executive branding? Here it is. We see you. We welcome you. We protect your right to belong. The next day, 3 major travel brands pledged to join Project Open Air. Then came the backlash. A former Skyward exec, red-faced on cable news, shouted, "She's turning exclusivity into entitlement." But the public was unmoved. They weren't looking for exclusivity. They were looking for recognition. Jade returned home that night to a quiet kitchen, made tea, and turned on the voicemail from her mother. "I saw you on TV today," the voice said, soft and proud. "You stood up like I knew you would. But you also made a seat. That's harder. And baby, I'm sitting in it now." But it wasn't over. Because the real threat wasn't just from outside. It was coming from the inside. The whistleblower who'd helped her before sent another email. "They're planning a board vote. Not to remove you. To silence you." Attached? An agenda. A quiet campaign to shift Jade into a non-voting honorary role. Elegant. Final. Disguised as a tribute. designed to erase her. Jade stared at the screen, then did something she rarely did. She stood in front of her mirror and practiced what she was going to say. Because this time, she wasn't just walking into a boardroom. She was walking into history. The boardroom was full, but not tense. Not yet. 12 chairs, 11 men, one silent countdown ticking beneath the marble floor. Outside, cameras buzzed in the lobby. Staff whispered by the elevators. But inside, Jade Coleman stood at the head of the table. No paper. No notes. No water. Just presence. The same presence that had once been treated like an accident of circumstance. Now it was the center of gravity. The chairman cleared his throat. Jade, before we begin, I want to thank you. We all do. Your contributions are not finished, she said. The men glanced at one another. Elias Denton, her mentor, now backpedaling, looked like he might say something, but didn't. They weren't used to this version of her. Not smiling. Not accommodating. Not asking. I received your proposed amendment, Jade said. Reclassifying my role as honorary. Non-voting. Symbolic. She let the words settle like dust. Symbolic. Then she smiled. Not kindly. Do you know what that word meant to my mother in 1964? It meant being the first black woman allowed to teach at her school, but being forced to use a different break room. It meant having her name printed in the local paper with the word token beside it. It meant being held up as proof, while being held down in private. She stepped forward. You don't want to silence me. You want to frame me. Like art on a wall that doesn't speak. The room was still. She could feel their discomfort. Good. Let it sweat. You brought me here for your brand, she said. You thought I'd be decoration. Diversity in a dress. A headline with legs. She looked directly at Elias now. But I came to build. And building takes more than approval. It takes ownership. Then came the move no one saw coming. She pulled out a flash drive. Plugged it in. A digital slideshow began to play behind her. Images of the new open-air lounges. Testimonies from young entrepreneurs. Disabled veterans. Elderly travelers. Mothers. Students. All saying the same thing, in different ways. This space finally saw me. You want to make me honorary? Jade said. I am honored. But not by this board. She clicked once more. Final slide. Effective immediately, Jade Coleman will resign from Skyward Air and assume the full-time role as CEO of Open Air Equity, a new travel company designed for those who were never supposed to have access to the sky. The room gasped. Wait, Jade. She raised a hand. No more edits to my voice. From now on, I won't be sitting at your table. I'll be building tables you're not invited to. That night, her resignation went public. But it wasn't shame. It was strategy. Open Air Equity announced its first investment round the next day, oversubscribed in 6 hours. 2 former Skyward VPs joined her within the week. And by month's end, Open Air had booked 200,000 memberships, mostly from people who had never dared to enter elite terminals before. Because now, they weren't entering through someone else's door. They were entering through hers. And now, I want to speak directly to you, the one watching this. Maybe you're in your 60s or 70s, remembering the rooms you weren't allowed in. Maybe you're younger, but feel that same chill when someone looks through you. Maybe you've been quiet too long because you thought speaking up would make you seem angry. Let me ask you something. Have you ever walked into a space and felt like you didn't belong, not because you weren't qualified, but because they'd already decided you weren't welcome? Have you ever been told you were a symbol, but never given a seat? Then let this be your sign. You don't need permission. You don't need to shrink. You don't need to stay silent to be safe. You need to be seen. And if this story hit you, speech balloon, tell us where you're watching from. Loudspeaker, share it with someone who's waited too long. Bellhop bell, subscribe if you believe dignity doesn't require a dress code. Because the next time someone tells you you don't belong in this room, you'll know exactly what to say. That's because the room is too small. I'm building something bigger.